Everybody was drunk, the whole band was drunk, going along the road in the dark. We were going to the Champagne. The lieutenant kept riding his horse out into the fields and saying to him, "I'm drunk, I tell you, mon vieux, I'm so sized." Drunk on the road to Champagne we go, in the dark, the night shadows we go. We went along the road all night in the dark, and the adjutant kept riding up alongside my kitchen and saying, "Hey, you must put it out, it is dangerous, it will be absurd." We were 50 kilometers from front, but the adjutant worried about the fire in my kitchen. It was funny going along that road. That was when I was a kitchen corporal. That was when I was a kitchen corporal. In a time, in a time, in a time, in a time, there was the war.
The first matador got the horn through his soul, and as a crowd hooted him out. The second matador slipped and the bone caught him through the belly, and he hung on to the horn with one hand and held the other tight against the place. And the bull rammed him wham against the wall, and the horn came out and he lay in the sand, and then got up like crazy drunk and tried to slug the men carrying him away in the air for his sword, but he fainted in the rain instead. And thunderous applause. The king came home, he had to kill 5 bulls, because you can't have more than 3 matadors. And the last bull, he was so tired, he couldn't get the sword in. He couldn't hardly lift his arm. He tried 5 times and the crowd was quiet, 'cause it was a good bull and it looked like him on a bull. And then he finally made it. He sat down in the sand and puked, and they held a cape over him, while the crowd hollered and threw things down into the bull ring. In our time, Toro, Toro, get stuck up in the rain out of Adrianople across the mud flats. The carts were jammed for 30 miles along the Carrigacha Road. Water buffalo and cattle were hauling carts through the mud. No end and no beginning, just carts loaded with everything they own. The old men and women soaked through, walked along, keeping the cattle moving. The Maritza was running yellow almost up to the bridge. Carts were jammed solid on the bridge, with camels bobbing along through them. Greek cavalry herded along the procession. Women and kids were in the carts, crouched with mattresses, mirrors, sewing machines, bundles. There was a woman having a kid with a young girl, holding a blanket over her and crying. Scared, sick, looking at it. It rained all through the evacuation. Just carts with mattresses, mirrors, sewing machines, bundles. There was a woman having a kid with a young girl holding a blanket over her and crying. Scared, sick, looking at it. It rained all through the evacuation. In our time, in our time. In our time, in our time, there was the war. We were in a garden at Mars. Young Rodney came in with his patrol from across the river. The first gentleman I saw climbed up on the garden wall. We waited till he got one leg over and nodded him. We shot him in a garden during the war. He had so much equipment all in the dark, but we surprised and fell down into the garden. Then three more came up further down the wall. We shot them. They opened just like that.
It was a frightfully hot day. We jammed an absolutely perfect barricade across the bridge.
It was simply priceless. A big old wrought iron grating from the front of a house, too heavy to lift and you could shoot through it and they would have to climb over it. It was absolutely humbling.
They tried to get over it, and we potted them from 40 yards.
You could shoot through it and they would have to climb over it. It was absolutely humbling.
They tried to get over it, and we potted them from 40 yards.
You could shoot through it and it was nice.
They rushed it, officers came out alone and worked on it. It was an absolutely perfect obstacle. Their officers were very fine. We were frightfully put out when we heard the frantic dawn, and we had to fall back.
In our time, there was the war.
We were frightfully put out when we heard the frantic dawn, and we had to fall back.
They shot the 6 cabinet ministers at 6:30 in the morning against the wall of a hospital. There were pools of water in the courtyard. There were wet dead leaves on the paving of the courtyard. It rained hard. All the shutters of the hospital were nailed shut. One of the ministers was sick with typhoid. 2 soldiers carried him downstairs and out into the rain. They tried to hold him up against the wall, but he sat down in a puddle of water. The other 5 stood very quietly against the wall. Finally the officer told the soldiers it was no good trying to make him stand up. When they fired the first volley, he was sitting down in the water with his head on his knees. In our time, there was the war. In our time, there was the war. In our time, there was the war.
Nick sat against the wall of the church where they had dragged him to declare a machine gun. Fire in the street, both legs stuck out awkwardly. He had been hit in the spine. His face was sweaty and dirty. The sun shone on his face. The day was very hot. Read on the big back as a grimace crawling, lay face down against the wall. Nick looked straight ahead brilliantly. The pink wall of the house opposite had fallen out from the roof. Had an iron dead step hung twisted toward the street. Two Austrian dead lay in the rubble in the shade of the house up the street where other dead things were getting forward in the town. It was going well, stretcher bearers would be along any time now. Nick turned his head carefully and looked down at Reno di Santa, Reno di Santa. You and me, we've made a separate peace. Reno di lay still in the sun, breathing with difficulty. Not patriots. Nick turned his head carefully away, smiling sweetly. Rinaldi was a disappointing audience. In our time, there was the war. In our time, there was the war. In our time, there was the war. In our time, there was the war.
While the bombardment was knocking the trench to pieces at full salter, he lay very flat and sweated, prayed, oh Jesus Christ, get me out of here. Dear Jesus, please get me out. Christ, please, 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 Christ, if you'll only keep me from getting killed, I'll do the thing you say. I believe in you and I'll tell everyone in the world that you are the only thing that matters. Please, please, dear Jesus. The shelling moved further up the line. We went to work on the trench in the morning. The sun came up and the day was hot and muggy and cheerful and quiet. The next night back in Estrella, he did not tell the girl he went upstairs with at the Villa Rossa about Jesus and never told anybody. Dear Jesus, please get me out. Christ, please, 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 Christ, if you'll only keep me from getting killed, I'll do the thing you say. I believe in you and I'll tell everyone in the world that you are the only thing that matters. Please, please, dear Jesus. The shelling moved further up the line. We went to work on the trench in the morning. The sun came up and the day was hot and muggy and cheerful and quiet. The next night back in Estrella, he did not tell the girl he went upstairs with at the Villa Rossa about Jesus and he never told anybody. Way back, way back, time, in our time, there was the war. In our time, 2 o'clock in the morning too. Hungarians got into a cigar store at 15th Street and Grand Avenue. Jevitson boy drove up from the 15th Street police station in a Ford. The Hungarians were backing their wagon out of an alley. Boy shot one off the seat of the wagon and one out a wagon box. Jevitz got frightened when he found they were both dead. Hell, Jimmy, he said, you oughtn't to have done it. It's liable to be hell of a lot of trouble. The crooks ain't they, said boy, the wops ain't they. Who the hell is gonna make any trouble? That's alright, maybe this time, said Jevitz, but how did you know they were wops when you bumped them? Wops, said boy, I can tell wops a mile off.
One hot evening in Milan, they carried him up onto the roof, and he could look out over the top of the town. There were chimney swifts in the sky. After a while it got dark and the searchlights came out. The others went down and took the bottles with them. He and Ed could hear them below on the balcony. Ed sat on the bed, she was cool and fresh in the hot night. In our time, there was the war. In our time, in our time. Ed stayed on night duty for 3 months. They were glad to let her when they operated on him. She prepared him for the operating day. And they had a joke about friend or enema. He went under the anesthetic, holding tight onto himself so that he would not blab about anything during the silly, talky time. After he got on crutches, he used to take the temperature so I would not have to get up from the bed. There were only a few patients, and they all knew about it. They all liked Dad. As he walked back along the halls, he thought of Ag in his bed. Before he went back to the front, they went into the duomo and prayed. It was dim and quiet, and there were other people praying. They wanted to get married, but there was not enough time for the bands, and neither of them had birth certificates. They felt as though they were married, but they wanted everyone to know about it and to make it so they could not lose it in our time. In our time, there was the war. In our time, in our time. And from the many lands the hospital. It was lonely and rainy there, and there was a battalion of ardent water in the town. Living in the muddy and rainy town in the winter, the major of the battalion made love to her, and she had never known Italians before. And finally wrote a letter to the States that theirs had been only a boy and girl affair. In our time, she was sorry and she knew he would probably not be able to understand, but might someday forgive her and be grateful to her. She expected, absolutely unexpectedly, to be married in the spring. She loved him as always, but she realized now it was only boy and girl love. She hoped he would have a great career and believed in him. Absolutely, she knew it was for the best. The major did not marry her in the spring or any other time. I never got an answer to her letters to Chicago. In our time, there was a war. In our time, a short time after he contracted gonorrhea from a salesgirl from the fair, riding in a taxi cab through Lincoln Park. In 1919, he was traveling on the railroads in Italy, carrying a square of oilcloth from the headquarters of the party, written in indelible pencil and saying here was a comrade who had suffered very much under the whites in Budapest, and requesting comrades to aid him in any way. He used this instead of ticket. He was very shy and quite young, and the trainman passed him on from one crew to another. He had no money, and they fed him behind the counter in railway eating houses. In our time, there was the and seen many pictures, Giotto Masaccio, and Fiesta. He bought reproductions of and carried them wrapped in a copy of Avanti. Mantegna, he did not lie. In our time, there was the He reported at Bologna, and I took him with me up into the Roma, where it was necessary I'd go to see a man. We had a good trip together. It was early September and the country was pleasant. He was a Magyar, a very nice boy and very shy. Half these men had done some bad things to him. He talked about it a little. In spite of Italy, he believed altogether in the world revolution. But how is the movement going in Italy? He asked. Very badly, I said, but it will go better, he said. You have everything here. It is the one country that everyone is sure of. It will be the starting point of everything. In our time, there was the war. At Bologna he said goodbye to us to go on the train to Milano, and then to Aosta to walk over past into Switzerland. I spoke to him about the Mantegnas in Milano. No, he said, very shyly, he did not like Mantegna. In our time, there was the war. And the addresses of commerce. He thanked me very much, but his mind was already looking forward to walking over the past. He was very eager to walk over the past while the weather held good. The last I heard of him was lying in jail near the side. In a
It whacked the white horse on the legs and he kneed himself up. The picador twisted the stirrup straight and pulled him hauled up into the saddle. The horse's entrails hung down in a blue bunch and swung backward and forward as he began to canter. The monos whacking him on the back of his legs with the rods. He cantered jerkily along the bar. He stopped stiff and one of the monos held his bridle and walked him forward. The picador kicked at his spurs, leaned forward and shook his lance at the bull. Blood pumped regularly from between the horse's front legs. He was nervously wobbly. The bull could not make up his mind to charge. In our times, there was the war. In our times, there was the war. In our times. The crowd shouted all the time, threw pieces of bread down into the rain, and cushions and leather wine bottles, keeping up, whistling and yelling. Finally the bull was too tired from so much bad sticking, and folded his knees and laid down, and one of the quadrilla leaned out over his neck and killed him with the puntillo. In our time, the crowd came over the barra and around the Torrio. The two men grabbed him and held him. Someone cut off his pigtail and was waving it. A kid grabbed it and ran away with it. Afterwards I saw him at the cafe. He was very short with a brown face and quite drunk, and he said, after all it has happened before like that, I am not really a good bullfighter.
Yeah, they happen right down close in front of you. You could see the lotus snarl at the bull and curse him. And when the bull charged, he swung back firmly like an oak when the wind hits it. His legs tied together, the mule trailing and the sword following the curve behind. Then he cursed the bull, flopped the mule at him, and swung back from the charge. His feet firm, the mule to curve it. And each swing the crowd roaring. In our time, in our time, there was the war. Toro, Toro. When he started to kill, it was all in the same rush. The bull looking at him straight in front, hating. He drew out the sword from the folds of the mule, sighted with the same movement, and called to the bull, Toro, Toro, Toro. Toro, Toro. Toro, Toro, Toro. And then the bull charged and filled to charge. Just for a moment, they became one. Philota became one with the bull. And then it was over. In our time, there was the war. Toro, Toro, Toro. Philip standing straight, and the red kilt of the sword sticking out dully between the bull's shoulders. Philota, his hand up at the crowd, and the bull roaring blood, looking straight at Philota, and his legs caving. In our time, there was the war. The crowd was roaring. Toro, Toro, Toro. In our time. And we're dancing down the street with them. He was drunk, alright. time, in our time, there was the water. You go down after him, said Mara, he hates me. So I went down and caught up with them and grabbed him while he was crouched down, waiting for the music to break loose, and said, come on, loose for Christ if you got both this afternoon. He didn't listen to me, he was listening so hard for music to start. Second beer, then full ways. Come back to the hotel, and the music started up again, and he jumped up and twisted away from me. I started dancing, I grabbed his arm and he pulled loose and said, oh, leave me alone, you're not my father. His arm and he pulled loose and said, I went back to the hotel, and there I was on the balcony looking out to see if I'd be bringing him back. He went inside when he saw me and came downstairs disgusted. Well, I said, after all, he's just an ignorant Mexican savage. Yes, Mary said, and who will kill his bulls after he gets her conjured up? We, I suppose, I said, yes, we said, Mary, in our time, in our time. And the drunkard's fools, and the real gangsters fools. Yes, we are the ones. We kill the bulls, alright. Yes, yes, yes. In our time, in our time, there was the war.
On his arms, his face in the sand, he felt warm and sticky from the being. Each time he felt the horn coming. Sometimes the bull only bumped him with his head, but once the horn went all the way through him, he felt it go into the sand. In our time, there was the war. Toro. Someone had the bull by the tail. They were swearing at him and flopping the cape in his face. Then the bull was gone. Some men didn't start to run with him toward the barriers, through the gate out the passageway, around under the grandstand to the infirmary. They laid it down on the cot And one of the men went out for the doctor, the other stood around. The doctor came right from the well where he had been sewing up the cattle horses. He had to stop and wash his hands. There was a great shouting going on in the bandstand overhead. Overhead, there wanted to say something, found he could not talk. Man, I felt everything getting larger and then smaller and smaller. Then it got larger and larger and larger. Then smaller and smaller. Everything commenced to run faster and faster. When they speed up a cinema turnaround film, then he was dead. Then he was dead. Time, there was the war. Toro, Toro, Toro.
They hang Sam Cardinella at 6 o'clock in the morning in the corridor of the county jail. The corridor was high and narrow with tiers of cells on either side. All the cells were occupied. The men had been brought in for the hanging. 5-man sentenced to be hanged were the 5 top cells. 3 of the men to be hanged were Negroes. They were very frightened. One of the white men sat on his cot with his head in his hands. The other lay flat on his cot with a blanket wrapped around his head. In our time, there was the war. They came out onto the gallows through a door in the wall. There were 6 or 7 of them, including 2 priests. They were carrying Sam Cardinella. He ended like that since about 4 o'clock in the morning. But while they were strapping his legs together, 2 guards held him up and the 2 priests were whispering to him. Be a man, my son, said one priest. In our time, there was the war. Who had been holding him up dropped him. They were both disgusted. How about a chair, Will asked one of the guards. Better get one, said a man in a dirty hat. When they all stepped back on a scaffolding back of the truck, which was very heavy, fields of oak and steel and swung on ball bearings. Sam Cardinella was left sitting there strapped tight. The younger of the 2 priests kneeling beside the chair. The priest skipped back onto the scaffolding just before the drop fell. They hanged Sam Cardinella. In our time, there was the war. In our time, there was. The king was working in the garden. He seemed very glad to see me. We walked through the garden. This is the queen, he said. She was clipping a rose bush.
"Oh, how do you do?" she said. We sat down at a table under a big tree, and the king ordered whiskey and soda. "We have good whiskey," he said. The Revolutionary Committee, he told me, were not allowed to go outside the palace grounds. Plastiers is a very good man, I believe, he said, frightfully difficult. I think he did right though, shooting those chaps. If Kerensky had shot a few men, things might have been altogether different. Of course, the great thing in this sort of an affair is not to be shot oneself. Of course, the great thing in this sort of an affair is not to be shot oneself. It was very jolly, we talked for a long time. Like all Greeks, he wanted to go to America. Now time was the war. Now time